Bore da, croeso. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of Council. I'd like to give a special welcome to Councillor Jonathan Holland on his first meeting. This Council meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and will be available to view online now and in the future. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I've had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Members in the chamber, please be aware that we're all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you wish to speak. Please remember to keep your microphones muted when you are not talking. May I remind members that as per the statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask you all, please use your cameras for the duration of this meeting. Please be aware that this meeting is being transcribed only for the purpose of producing minutes. This transcript will be deleted once the committee approves the minutes, and the transcript should not be downloaded by anyone other than Democratic Services. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance. Democratic Services will be making a note of members' attendance in the meeting, but should you lose connection, could you possibly leave a comment in the chat bar on your return to ensure that this is picked up? Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Dominique, have we any apologies, please?
I've had apologies from Councillors Catherine Bonera, Liam Cowles, Giles Davis, Nicholas Simons and Chris Tew.
Thank you. Are there further apologies? Councillor Caroline Price, any other further apologies? Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Delith Harris, Monitoring Officer, have you any advice for members, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'm not aware of any interest to declare. Some of the reports, in particular the education services, is quite general and includes makes reference to a large number of schools. So my advice is that you don't need to declare an interest at the start of the meeting, but if you enter into a debate or ask a question about a specific school, you can consider declaring an interest at that time. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you, Delith. Agenda item 4 is the confirmation of the Council minutes. These are the 26th of the 5th, 2026, the AGM, starting on page 5. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? Councillor Watkins?
I just noticed, not that I speak Welsh, but in the English minutes, it's noted what time Alfie Best joined, and then in the Welsh minutes, it's an hour earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. We picked that up. Any further comments? No? They're approved then. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the confirmation of the Council minutes the 26th of the 5th, 2026, which is the ordinary meeting. These start on page 19 of your agenda. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to these minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. Thank you. Agenda item 6, the confirmation of the Council minutes on the 9th of June 2026, starting on page 49 in the agenda. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to these minutes? If not, I'll take them as approved. Thank you, they are approved. Agenda item 7, the update on actions. Members, the update on what has been done to implement our previous decisions start on page 75 of the agenda. Could you possibly indicate whether you have any questions or comments? Members, do you agree on the update of the actions? Thank you, they are noted. Agenda item 8, receipt of petitions. We have one petition today in relation to a pump track in Pontypool Park, submitted by Torfaen resident Ellis Davis. Councillor Nick Byrne, can you present the petition on Alice Davis' behalf, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. On behalf of Torfaen resident Alice Davis, I would like to present the following petition. We, the undersigned, petition Torfaen County Borough Council to halt current plans to rebuild the skate park at Pontypool Park, and instead reallocate those funds to construct a modern all-wheel tarmac pump track at a separate, dedicated site within the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Members, do you agree for the petition to be sent to the relevant executive member for them to consider, respond and report back? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Agenda item 9 is the public question time. There are no public questions today, so we'll move on to agenda item 10, which is the announcements from the Leader and the Chief Executive. Leader, do you have any announcements, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. First of all, I'd like to welcome Councillor Jonathan Hollins, the recently elected Councillor for Llantarnam Ward, to this chamber. I look forward to meeting with you over the coming months. Secondly, I'd like to send our respects to the families of two friends and colleagues of ours in this chamber who passed away this weekend. First of all, we pay our respects on the passing of former Two Locks councillor Stuart Cameron. Stuart was fondly remembered as an officer and then a councillor here in Torfaen, and our thoughts and prayers go to his family and friends. Next, we also remember Chris Preston, the husband of former councillor Kelly Preston, who passed away this weekend after a brave 2-year battle against pancreatic cancer. Next, I'd like to express my sorrow at the passing of Anne Widdicombe. I encountered Anne personally when working for Paul Murphy when he was Northern Ireland Secretary. We may not always have agreed, but she was someone you could have a spirited debate with. I know investigations into the disturbing circumstances around her death continue, but I would like to pass on our best wishes to our friends and family from this chamber. And in note of those three, I'd like to propose that we stand, if that's okay, Presiding Member, for a moment's silence.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Next, I'd like to thank all the crews working on the wildfire above our valley. Our thoughts go to those affected, and we hope everyone stays safe. Next, on a more positive note, I attended the opening of the 3G pitch at Cwmbran High School last week. This is another great facility for the school and the community, provided after we listened to the case made by pupils on the school council. I'd also like to mention some of the fantastic community events over the past month: Party in the Park, Cwmbran Big Event, Relay for Life, the Pontywood Park Fun Day, the Mick Morris 10K and Crowfest this weekend, just to mention a few examples. Thank you to the community councils, community groups and individual volunteers who make these events possible. Every one of them strengthens our communities, benefits our local economy and gives activities for local people to enjoy. Next, I'd like to give congratulations and good luck to the 3 Torfaen Dolphins competing for Wales at this summer's Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Theodora Taylor, Megan Willis and Dylan Broom will have all of our support. Thank you to all involved in the Dolphins for your dedication to our young people. On the subject of sports, I welcome the petition on skate and wheeled sports provided today to Council and look forward to responding positively wherever possible. No plans for specific facilities are currently set in stone, and we look forward to listening both to the petition and to the recent consultation as we take plans forward. Next, I would like to present a civic award to say thank you to the Torfaen Canal Volunteer Group in recognition of their 20th anniversary. Councillor Elizabeth Haynes nominated them to celebrate the group's achievements and to thank them for their invaluable work that they have undertaken over the years. So they'd like to come down to receive the presentation of the award. And lastly, Madam Presiding Officer, I'd like to invite down to the front Councillor Janet Jones, along with Richard Roynan, Laura Jones and Cyril Turner, who are attending on behalf of Blenavon Community Museum to present an updated roll of honour, acknowledging the Blenavon servicemen who lost their lives in the First and Second World Wars. It's been updated to honour those not mentioned in the previous book. I'd like to invite them down to the front.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the volunteers of Blenavon Community Museum, we would like to thank you for allowing us to take a few minutes of your valuable time. The reason we are here is to present the leader with an updated version of the Roll of Honour for Blenavon. This has been produced following a request to Archivist Richard Roynan and Laura Jones to undertake a family history session. This resulted in the knowledge that a family member, a serviceman, during World War I, lost his life and was not acknowledged on the cenotaph. Was this a one-off, or were there more missing? Research undertaken when producing the World War I book resulted in discovery that approximately 50 names of servicemen were not acknowledged on our cenotaph. Further research over a period of time found that another 13 names of servicemen from World War I and 11 from World War II would not be acknowledged. All these were from Blenavon. This was shameful for our community as well as distressing for the family. To this end, Richard and Laura produced a new book with the aid of a grant from the Welsh Church Fund, which we hope will be displayed here in the Civic Centre. Our greater aim is to get a new bronze plaque on our cenotaph to show all the names. This has a cost of £24,000. At present, current donations have reached 11,000, still somewhere to go. We wish to take this opportunity to thank the leader and all officers in Torfaen for the support they give us at the museum and hope that it may continue. However, should anyone even think of making a small contribution to our cenotaph appeal, we would receive it gratefully.
Thank you, Leader. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
Just one announcement from me, Madam Presiding Member, just to inform Council that Roger Allenby has been appointed as the Joint Director for Economy and Place. I'm sure members will join me in congratulating Roger. He'll be joining us in September, and we wanted to bring members of the Chamber up to date in regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Takes us to agenda item 11, which is the Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report, which starts on page 77. Mrs. Catherine Peggington, Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee, could you deliver this report for us, please? Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, Presiding Member. Good morning, everybody. I'm Catherine Peggington, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me along this morning to present the report of the Annual Governance and Audit Committee for 2025-26. I've chaired this committee for several years, and presenting this report to you has been undertaken in recent years to raise the profile and promote the work that we undertake within Torfaen. The full report of work we have undertaken is within your papers, and I will assume that you have read it. It's important that the Council has an independent Governance and Audit Committee that follows best practice. This committee is the primary means by which full council obtains assurance that governance, risk management and control systems are in place and are effective. The committee consists of 8 people, 5 elected members and 3 lay members, of which I am one. We abide by the Code of Conduct, the same as all elected members. And during this last year, we met 4 times. All of our meetings were hybrid in nature. Item 4.2 in the report is a summary of the work undertaken last year. The committee receives and reviews both internal and external audits and monitors ongoing progress where needed. As you can see, 4.8, we are awaiting outstanding financial reports relating to the audit of the statement of accounts. These will be reviewed when received later this year. Earlier this year, the Council and the Committee were reviewed as part of the All Wales Inspection of Local Authorities. The review was coordinated by the Welsh Local Government Association. Each council in Wales is required under the Local Government and Elections Act of 2021 to undertake a peer review known as the Panel Performance Assessment once every local government electoral cycle. The Council received its final Panel Performance Assessment report on the 1st of July 2025. The report provided the assurance that the Council is generally meeting its performance duties. The report did make 5 recommendations to support further improvement. The Council prepared a response to the PPA report, which the Governance and Audit Committee reviewed as part of its statutory role. As a committee, we will continue to monitor the actions contained in this report and undertake this work to ensure effective and reliable departments within the Council. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the officers who have submitted reports over the previous years and responded to queries from the committee. This has undoubtedly enhanced the work of the committee, especially assisting the lay members. Can I also thank the Democratic Services for their support and help. This sums up the annual report of the Governance and Audit Committee. Thank you all for listening.
Members, any comments? Councillor Slade first, and then I'll bring in Councillor Jones later. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. My question really is for the Chief Finance Officer regarding paragraph 4.8, where it says the audit for the 24-25 accounts hasn't reported back. I just wondered if you could tell us why the delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. The reason for the delay, there's a technical query raised by Audit Wales about the historic treatment of assets within our accounts. We're working with Audit Wales to work through that and provide further information for them to carry on their audit. So it's just a technical adjustment that we're going through with them to provide the evidence of how assets have been valued historically within the accounts.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'd just like to welcome this report. The work of the Governance and Audit Committee is very important, but it often goes under the radar. So it's really important that this report comes to the full Council once a year. And I'm particularly grateful for all the work that the 3 lay members do, which obviously gives the chair is independent, who's spoken today. We rely heavily on the 3 lay members, and I'd just like to express my appreciation for their particular hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. The recommendations are on page 81 of the report. The recommendation says to note the work of the Governance and Audit Committee for the 25-26 year. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That report is noted. Thank you, Mrs. Peggington. Takes us to agenda item 12, the Treasury Management Outturn Report 25-26, which starts on page 83 of the agenda. Robert Green, the Head of Financial Services, could you deliver the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Good morning, Council. So it's the first of 2 reports I'm bringing to you this morning. This is the Treasury Management Outturn for 25-26. This is a statutory requirement upon us as a local authority to produce an outturn report and bring it to Council. for consideration. It's also already been through the Governance and Audit Committee process as part of their remit. So the report just summarises the activities in the Treasury management function during the last year, and as I said, that fulfils our requirements under the CITFA Code of Practice. I'll just give a few highlights in terms of the report. So you can see paragraph 3.1, that outlines our borrowing activity for the year and highlights the fact that our overall debt figure has reduced from a year before, and that's mainly in connection with reduced temporary borrowing. Critically, we don't hold any variable rate loans, so we're not exposed to any interest rate changes. All of our loans are on a fixed term basis. We currently use our available surplus investment balances to fund capital projects during the year rather than taking external borrowing. That's known as internal borrowing. It's generally the cheapest form of borrowing, so what it means is we forgo interest earned, but that's generally less of a cost than incurring new externally paid interest. As a consequence, overall, we're under-borrowed against our calculated borrowing requirement by about £8 million. As you can see in the report, we've also taken loans with other local authorities. This is generally regarded as a favourable approach because it avoids the cost of carrying long-term loans, whilst interest rates have generally been higher than they have been in previous years over the last 12 months. Moving on to investments, you can see that we also invested £10 million with other local authorities. That allowed us to take advantage of increased returns. Also made sure that we retained our MiFID II status, which means we get access to preferential loan products through the Public Works Loans Board. In terms of our overall return investment performance, you can see in paragraph 3.2.5 our investment returns on a weighted average method was 4.6%. That's lower than the previous financial year, but that's reflective of the fact that interest rates did drop a little bit year on year. But critically, we outperformed one of the recognised industry benchmarks, which is 4.011%. So generally speaking, our investment performance was positive. The other key aspect of the report is around prudential indicators. So these are the indicators that get agreed as part of setting the Treasury management strategy for the year when the budget gets approved. It's pleasing to be able to report that we adhered to all of those indicators. There is one that we technically exceeded, but in terms of our exposure to interest rate sensitivities. However, by quirk of the way that indicator works, it actually means we performed better than expected. So it's a positive in a roundabout way, although technically speaking we did exceed it by virtue of holding slightly more investment balances than we were anticipating. In terms of our external debt indicators, the two most critical ones are the authorised limit for external debt and the operational boundary for external debt. And we adhere to both of those, which is especially important because the authorised limit cannot be breached and the operational boundary can only be breached for a temporary period, but we didn't actually breach either of them at all. So that's a really positive outcome for the year. And I think overall, just to say, as Section 4 of the report sets out, overall, we have been successful in the last 12 months in managing our cash flow requirements and also adhering to our approved prudential indicators and strategies. In doing so, that's meant that we've kept interest rates as low as possible, and we've managed to avoid locking into longer-term borrowing and the interest rates associated with that, whilst interest rates felt to remain higher. So that concludes an overview of the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Leader?
I would just like to thank Rob and officers for their hard work on this, in making sure that we make the Council's money work as hard as we can and therefore reduce the overall burden on Council taxpayers. I think it's vital in an organisation that has, a large, revenue budget and capital budget, that we make sure that we make our money work for us. So, borrow at attractive as rates as possible, and when we have temporary surpluses, make that money work for us rather than just sitting in a bank account losing value in the real terms. So thank you for their hard work in doing that, and I'd just like to draw members' attention to paragraph 4.2, which confirms the success in that this year.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Yeah, I think it was a very helpful report and a lot of detail. And I think at this time, when there's a lot of pressure on local authority spending, it's good to see the prudent management of funds. My only question is on page 90, you talked about a variance of 3.74 million, and in relation to slippage into 26-27. So I suppose it's two parts, really. First is, are we confident that that slippage will be used? And secondly, is there any more detail on how it will be deployed?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Williams. So, yeah, in terms of slippage, generally that's, almost in all cases, that's connected to ongoing schemes. So by its very nature, the expectation is that that will be utilised during either the current 12 months that we're in now, or if it's a multi-year scheme over the course of those projects. So we've outlined a few examples of where the slippage was experienced. So 3G pitches being an example, and the leaders already referred to one earlier in this meeting where that scheme is now complete. So, and the other ones, just another example, is the asset management programme. So that's an ongoing rolling programme. There's always more to be done than funds allow anyway. So yeah, we've got no reason with any of those to have immediate concerns about whether those funds will get used. The main risk comes where there's external grant funding involved. Sometimes that can be time, or often that is time limited, but generally speaking, we're proactive in our management of that and our communication with the grant awarding bodies, and if there is a risk of slippage, we try to get an early conversation to seek permission to slip funds forward, and generally speaking, we've not had any major issues where that's concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. The recommendations are on page 91 of the report. I ask the members whether they agree with those recommendations, please. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, Robert. That report is carried. Takes us to agenda item 13, which is the revised capital programme 26-27 to 2030-31, which starts on page 93. Robert Green, Head of Financial Services, can you deliver this report, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yeah, so this is an update on the capital programme. So you will recall as Council that you agreed the 5-year programme as part of the wider budget setting meeting in March, and that set out the plans for the next 5 years. Obviously, since then, we've had the end of the previous financial year. As we just touched on with the previous item, there was some slippage arising from that, so that's been carried forward. So we're required to obviously update the programme to take account of that, but also of any new grant awards we've had during the year, because generally with capital, what we tend to see is that the programme grows during the course of the year as bodies such as Welsh Government give their annual allocations for specific areas of grant-funded activity. So Cabinet received the outturn report in early June that outlined the level of slippage. But since then, we've also undertaken an exercise to do some reprofiling around certain schemes, particularly those of a multi-year nature, just so that the programme is more reflective of the likely spend over the course of the next 5 years. And also to highlight, and this is the main reason for bringing this report today, towards the very end of the 25-26 financial year, Welsh Government issued capital grant funding to all local authorities across Wales. Our share was just over £1.5 million. And that grant funding was in the form of additional general capital grants. So every year we get general capital grant from Welsh Government. This was an additional allocation in 25-26, and that is what is being proposed to be allocated in this meeting today. So there's a few tables within the report that set out the capital programme in summary, the position as it was in June, but then since the reprofiling has been done. Critically, just to highlight that overall, the level of unallocated resource, which includes this £1.5 million, hasn't changed. We've just amended the profile over which that's shown over 5 years, but the total remains the same. So the main section of the report to draw your attention to is paragraph 3.5, and that sets out how the £1.5 million is proposed to be allocated. So you can see a table there that sets out a number of different allocations, all within the sort of neighbourhoods and environment service remit, various priorities, trying to cover off some of the main issues, but also facing the council in that particular area, but also trying to align with the deal and the aspirations of the deal wherever possible. In terms of what allocating that money means for the authority, so as you'll see, that reduces the contingency or the unallocated capital funding that we have in this financial year to £240,000. Now, that may not seem an awful lot, but generally, thankfully we haven't had to call on contingency too much in recent years. It's also in line with the annual allocation that we have as a sort of starting point for each year anyway. And it's felt that that's sufficient to mitigate against any cost increases or fluctuations that may occur during the year. Obviously, if there are bigger pressures that emerge, we do have the flexibility to move contingency between years. So it's not to say that we're completely restricted to that amount, but it's felt to be an appropriate amount at this point. And beyond 26-27, you'll see that the overall level of unallocated resources is totaling just over 13 million. So as I said, that flexibility to use some of that if needed is there. And however, we would hope to be able to manage schemes as well as possible and not have to call upon that. But that unallocated then gives scope going forward for other emergent priorities and pressures that could come to our attention over the coming years. As ever, it's critical that the Council tries to attract as much external grant funding as possible. I think generally we've been quite successful in doing that, because that obviously limits the call upon our own resources, which are finite and limited, but also critically reduces the chance of having to externally borrow and incur the costs that's connected with that. And just to conclude, in paragraph 4.2, there's a revised capital programme summary table, which just gives you an overview of the position as it is currently. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Leader?
I'd like to thank you for the reports. Two things I'd like to draw members' attention to. The first is paragraph 3.5, the additional allocation from the funding of 1.5 million received at the end of the last financial year. I believe that the allocations there reflect the priorities in this chamber and indeed in our communities in terms of equipment and more resource for road repairs, a cleaner borough, play park improvements, canal improvements and cemeteries. So I welcome that paragraph of the report. And moving on to section 4.2, just like to say to members, as you all know, unfortunately unallocated does not equal spare. The to-do list is always much longer and more costly than the spare resource. So how we decide to allocate that will be a difficult discussion for the Council in future months and years, because the list of things that we need to do with that money are always much longer than the available resource that we have.
Thank you, Leader. I don't see any... Oh, Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Yeah, I'll just echo some of the points from the Leader. I was pleased to see allocation towards cemeteries, for example. And I think it's going to be helpful for us in our scrutiny programme to see how the investment in equipment is having an impact. So I would try and kind of remind members, let's bear this in mind when we go through the scrutiny for the year to see the impact in terms of some of this additionality of investment. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further comments. Members, the recommendations are on 6.1 of the... No, sorry, 7.1 of the report. Are there any members... all members in favour of the recommendations? Please show. Thank you. Any members against the recommendations? Any abstentions? Thank you. That report is carried. Thank you very much, Robert. That takes us to agenda item 14, the County Plan 22-27, the Delivery Plan 25-26, and end-of-year update on page 99 of your agenda. Councillor Peter Jones, the Executive Member, Corporate Governance and Resources. Can you introduce this report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Before I begin my introduction, I must record my thanks to all the officers involved in developing the report, which I'm sure you will appreciate is a significant piece of work. Members will be very familiar with the delivery plan, given the regular reports that have been provided since it was adopted in December 2022. As a Council, we are committed to produce an annual delivery plan throughout its 5-year lifespan, and that progress against the plan is reported twice a year into full Council. This report means we have now completed 4 years of the 5-year cycle for the plan. I am very pleased to report that progress is excellent. The report sets out the detail, and I will just cover off the key headlines. Against the milestones set out, 61.3% are reported as on target or completed, green and blue. 21.4% of actions experience some difficulties, but with a clear route back to being on track, amber. And 8.8% deemed as having more significant concerns, red. During the course of the year, one activity had to be aborted. As was the case in previous years, the report demonstrates excellent progress with the majority of the delivery plan being on target or has successfully completed. And I am immensely proud of the services and officers from across the Council who continue to deliver for the citizens of Torfaen. Although I can't go through all the service improvements in my introduction, I'm sure Council will be pleased to note the success we've had during the year delivering. I'll give some examples. The completion of the new £17 million primary school with Phase 2, including the construction of a flying start and childcare setting. The new school has recently been praised by Eston inspectors. The completion of a new 3G pitch in Lantarnham, including a floodlit all-weather surface, changing rooms, team dugouts, 2 spectator stands and a new car park. A new booking system has been developed to enable residents and clubs to access the growing number of sports facilities. Continued safe reduction in the number of children who are looked after in Torfaen, reflecting the service's ability to support children who achieve performance and improved outcomes in a timely manner, whilst maintaining appropriate oversight of risk and need. Delivered nearly 400 play and respite sessions through Torfaen Play Service. Over 50% of the homes built in Torfaen during the year were affordable housing. Working in accordance with DEAL included strong community and partnership activity to prevent littering and fly tipping. Work included school talks, community engagement, dog mess awareness packs, red litter picking bags, support to sports clubs, schools, allotments and community groups, and joint activity with partners including Keep Wales Tidy, Bronavon, town councils and local resident groups. The TCBC Spring Clean programme delivered 5 clean-up events with 59 participants collecting 110 bags of litter, supported by wider highway cleansing through tidy towns. These activities demonstrate strong delivery through community engagement and partnership, working to protect the local environment. I could go on. Where we are not meeting expectations, I want to give all members the reassurances about targets we currently judge to be amber or red. The message here is that services are continually reviewing progress and that we are very carefully and regularly monitoring our performance through the Council's executive team and policy development forum. Red or amber does not mean we are not going to deliver. We are going to deliver, but for assorted reasons it might not be as quick as we originally thought. Our targets are meant to be challenging, and if you monitor properly, you sometimes must adjust to ensure you achieve the outcomes you desire. My Cabinet colleagues are here if anyone has any detailed questions. I'll now hand back to the presiding member.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Sue Morgan.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm really pleased to see Objective 5 to respond to the climate and nature emergencies is an overwhelmingly positive performance story with no amber or red actions, and given that this really is a golden thread effort that extends right across the Council, can I extend my thanks to all those staff and members across the Council for their actions in this regard. But my concern for the pace of climate impacts that we're seeing daily on the news and which are seen in global, national and regional news coverage is only growing. I'm proud of what we're doing as a borough and as a nation, but the need to bring everyone with us in this global effort and local effort is really pressing. So I'd like to announce that this Council will invite elected members from across Torfaen at all levels to a screening of the People's Emergency Briefing in September. If you haven't heard yet of this briefing, fronted by Chris Packham, the well-known presenter, This briefing is based on a Westminster event which brought together field-leading scientists and strategic leaders from across the UK. It paints a broad and stark picture of the challenges, but also the ways in which we can come together to tackle them. I'll also be encouraging community screenings across Torfaen and be joining the call for a national televised transmission of what will become a national emergency briefing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Don't see any further hands up. The recommendations are on, Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I think it's useful to see the full picture in this way, and I suppose I noted a couple of slight concerns, and I'm hopeful that our scrutiny programme for next year will look at some of those. So, for example, on Objective 3 about tackling inequality, there are a number around housing support, and I know that's an important topic, very much the executive member's remit. So I hope we can see that. And there's also dependence on partners with that kind of thing as well. So I think we need to be careful not to beat ourselves up too much when some of that input is coming from partners who've not been able to deliver at quite the rate we had hoped that they would do. I'm also pleased to note that actually on page 120 of the report on public protection notices, that is another thing that we've identified as being important for scrutiny so that we can start to address this. So I think it's very important that our scrutiny programme takes a full account of where we are in terms of our county plan and focuses on how we might be able to do some of those things better. My other observation would be at Objective 9, the customer focus services, which I think each time we've seen a little bit of a shortfall, a lot of amber in there. So I would like to think that that is going to be an area of focus for this council going forward, so that we actually both meet the achievements, but also make sure that our citizens are getting the services they should expect from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Dame Watkins.
Thank you, President Member. Under Wellbeing 6, at the end, I see that we've aborted one of the objectives to support 40 young people into youth entrepreneurial activities because of the redesign in the early intervention and prevention programme. So are we going to see that objective come back under a different guise in future?
Thank you, Councillor. We will see that objective coming back in, but within a different format. So, if, for example, you'll be aware of some of the apprenticeship schemes that we've got running within the local authority, so it'll be incorporated within that broader activity for young people.
Thank you. Dave, did you want to say anything else? No, that's fine. Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Colette Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like some information on page 108 about NEETs. On the column there, it says no data, and I just wondered when we're likely to have that data for members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So the data for NEETs is published as a snapshot each year on the 31st of October. So that data for the current year, for the preceding year, will be available on the 31st or from the 31st of October. It will need to be verified from the 31st of October, so it will be presented to Council at the later date then, so we can track that progress against this year's performance.
Any further comments before I go to the recommendations? Councillor Dave Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I made this point last year, and it's sad to say that I'm making the same point this year. PPN's public protection notices remain very high. It's an issue all across Gwent, and this is in spite of every effort to engage with Gwent Police on the issue. We're still receiving far too many inappropriate referrals through that route. But I was pleased that the Adults and Communities Scrutiny Committee took the decision to prioritise it as a joint committee scrutiny session with Blaenau Gwent. So Gwent Police will be invited to that. So hopefully we can really get to the nub of the issue there and really nail down why they keep making these inappropriate referrals, because it is taking significant officer time all across Gwent, not just in Torfaen, everywhere in Gwent.
Thank you, Councillor Daniels. That was picked up in scrutiny as well. Yeah. Any Councillor Ashley. Stuart Ashley.
to use yours. I note that most of the questions here, this report provides a good picture, and it's one of the things that comes up in scrutiny about this way of working, that it does provide a good snapshot at this time. Is there anything you think we could do better? I only say that because it's provided a very useful picture, and in scrutiny it's certainly helped. I just wonder if there are certain things you could add in. It's a very simple little question, I just wondered.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Ashley. I think we're always looking to make improvements. Any recommendations that yourself or Scruton or any member's got that we can do that, we'd certainly take on board. I mean, certainly what you will see going forward is a slightly different way of reporting. This time last year, we were starting to introduce the concept of the deal, of course. I'm really pleased to say that you'll start to see the deal and its activity threaded much more so through our delivery reports, and that's certainly something that we'll need to adapt just to represent just the great work that's going on across our council, with our communities, and with our residents and with our partners to achieve the outcomes that we've set in the county plan, and of course the objectives around the delivering our objectives as a Marmot Council.
Thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak or comment. Recommendation is on page 103 of your report, and Councillor asked to note the progress made delivering the county plan, delivery plan 25-26. Are there any members? Okay, members, are you in favour of those note in the report? Thank you. Anybody against? I don't see any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 15, which is the Education Services Update, which starts on page 171 of your agenda. Dr. Andrew Powles, Director of Education, could you deliver this report for us, please? Thank you. Ably assisted by Claire Williams and Andy Rothwell. Welcome. Thank you.
Morning, members. I'm Andrew Powles, Director of Education. This is Andy Rothwell, Head of Learning and Achievement, and Claire Williams, Head of ALN Inclusion and Wellbeing. We've come en masse today because it's such a broad portfolio, but also Claire and Andy have recently led on the aspects that Estin have covered during an enhanced LANI visit, so that perhaps I'll be able to give you a bit more detail. So this is our 6-monthly update to full council, which is a commitment we made following the previous inspection. I'll just go through some of the key points of the report. So the report is split into 9 sections. The first part is a review of last year's education improvement plan. And we felt we made strong or suitable progress against each of the objectives within that plan. Some of the strengths were actually increasing cluster working and strengthening cluster working across the local authority, strengthening leadership capacity within the local authority and particularly within the ALN team. So that was a recommendation back in 2022, and that's part of the work that Claire has overseen. Financial management across the local authority has been strong across schools. We ended up with I think it's around a £5 million overall surplus in the school budgets at the end of last financial year. And the average balance for school was the second highest in Wales, based on some WLGA collation. The School Improvement Service, that was previously known as EAS, now known as LACIS, we've completed the revisions as part of the middle tier review, and now all directors of education sit alongside elected members as directors and non-executive directors on the board. We've had some external review of the provision, and actually we all feel it's gone from strength to strength. Attendance has continued to increase across Torfaen schools, but it's not at the level that we would want it to be. It's still below pre-pandemic levels, but generally we're placing around 6 out of the 22 local authorities, which based on our demographic is better than we would have expected, and that's part of the work that Andy leads on. There's also been significant capital and digital infrastructure investment. So this is an ongoing programme, and again, we're really pleased with the progress that's been made. We talked about Maindy Primary, the work at Bryn Onnon, and significant digital investment. Again, this is work that Andy leads on to make sure we've got schools fit for the future. Areas for development were addressing the continued and increasing demand for ALN specialist provision. So we are seeing increasing demand, increasingly vulnerable learners. So there's a programme of work about how we make more inclusive schools, as well as having increased the capacity of both Cranbridge and other specialist places. This is a significant area of work for us, and Claire's been completing a piece of work looking at projections of future need over the next 5 to 10 years, which will be progressed further this year. The other areas, the NEETs rates increased last year, and again, that's something that's been touched on this morning. The second part of the plan is looking at the priorities for this year. So we've maintained the objectives that we set in last year's plan because we felt they were still relevant, and that was after consultation with heads, governors and elected members. So within the plan, you've got the link to the 6 objectives and the specific actions and criteria that sit underneath that. In June, we had Estyn in for a 2-day visit as part of the enhanced LA Link visit. So this is part of the new inspection framework, and all LAs have it each inspection cycle. This time they looked at attendance and additional learning needs, and again it was a really positive outcome. In terms of attendance, there was one minor suggestion that we share vulnerable groups of learners' data monthly, which Andy will be instigating from September. And again, it was about how we would look at the increasing demand for ALN and how we promote inclusive practice across our schools, which is something we actually presented to Estyn as our needs. And again, that's the areas Claire is leading on. But it's been a really positive inspection, visit, and pleasingly, a number of local authorities have contacted us in the last few months to come and see our practice and to share particularly how we're addressing evaluation and improvement planning as a strength within the local authority. The fourth section in the report is an overview of school inspections over the last year. So you'll see that no schools required any Estyn follow-up from inspections since September 25. The PRU was removed from significant improvement, and it wasn't only just removed, it had a very strong visit. And again, other local authorities are coming to visit the PRU to see the practice, and the head of the PRU has been asked to support other heads in other local authorities. This is an area that Andy leads on, so again, it's another strength within the local authority. Also want to just promote that actually there was a number of really positive spotlights within the inspection reports. All schools had a spotlight, and Cross Ecomp actually had a case study of effective practice. That's one of the first we've had in a while, and that was about the effective culture and inclusive nature of the school. So again, that's a real credit to the school and the leadership there that Estyn have identified as that's basically sector leading practice that should be shared across Wales. The fifth section discusses the resources and planning work that's taken place. This is led by John Tushingham. So there's a number of updates there relating to safeguarding, capital investment, the extended rollout of free school meals, that our admissions team are now picking up responsibility for voluntary aided schools admissions. That's from September 27. So that's a new piece of work in line with Welsh Government change in policy. And also about the energy efficiency team that work across the local authority. And it's not just about cost savings, it's about bringing energy efficiency and climate awareness into the curriculum so that learners use it to learn about science, about data handling, as well as understanding the general challenges. In terms of additional learning needs, which is the next section, I've already spoken, there's been a significant challenge in addressing the demand for placements and inclusive practice. However, we do place almost £5 million into the mainstream school budget each year for learners within mainstream provision. This is a really significant amount, and it has increased, well, it's increased significantly over the last few years. And last year, as Council, you agreed an additional 300,000 input into that budget. There's also 1.7 million spent on out-of-county placements. We want our learners in Torfaen. Where possible, we want them in mainstream so that we can have them as part of our community. To support that, there's also been capital investments through grants and core budgets to refurbish our learning resource bases and to expand provision, and also to upgrade provision within mainstream schools. Elective home education is a key focus for us. At the end of this academic year, we had over 500 learners who were electively home educated. That's a huge increase on pre-pandemic levels, and it is an area of concern for us. We recognise it's a parent's right to choose to electively home educate, and we support that. However, we also have a duty to make sure that that education is of a suitable quality. And unfortunately, we have identified some areas where that was not the case, and we've had to issue school attendance orders. And unfortunately, where they were not adhered to, we have had to follow up through the courts, and several families have received quite significant fines. This is not the route we want to go in. We want to make sure that all children are having an effective education. So again, and this is an area of work Andy works on, and working actually across local authority and with other local authorities to make sure that we are addressing this as best we can. I've also highlighted in there that Coleg Gwent had an inspection this year. So there's a link within the report to the full inspection from Estyn. Coleg Gwent has separate governance, but clearly it's largely our sixth form provision within Torfaen, so it's something we take really seriously. Although there were areas of strength highlighted in the report, and there are spotlights, particularly around the use of CENCOM, and it's praised the way that the local authority works with Coleg Gwent, it's important to notice it did go into a follow-up category. So there is no name to it, it's just follow-up with Estyn, and we're working closely with Coleg Gwent to support them as best they can to address their recommendations. And finally, just to talk about school governors, our vacancies are very low at the minute. This is something we've worked hard on. And as of today, we've got 4 LA governor vacancies, which is the lowest it's been in many, many years. However, there are still vacancies for parents and community members across our schools. I'd really encourage community members to take part as to become governors. It's such a key role, comes with significant responsibility, but it's a very rewarding job. And I think I will leave it there. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Richard Clark.
I know how the strategic director feels at cabinet meetings when I steal his thunder by speaking first, because Andrew's had the privilege of giving you a large amount of the good news. But that's right, fit and proper, because the team on the platform are the team that have delivered the change that was required in our education service. So it's a pleasure to speak to this paper today. When I spoke many moons ago now, when we were in Estyn special measures, I said I would not look for a tick box exercise to come out and the continuous business as usual, something we did in about 2012, which we languished and we ended up where we did. This is a journey of continuous and sustainable improvement. It was required then, and I believe this report highlights how this has become the very core of the service we provide. We know our schools, we know the service, our strengths and our weaknesses, and the improvement plan that Dr. Powell's referred to helped develop with our schools, with our partners, addresses these weaknesses and builds upon our strengths. Our improvement journey now means other local authorities, as Dr. Prowell's indicated, seek our counsel on education matters. And if my fingers weren't shaken, I'd be able to lower the screen. Sorry. There is a lot to be said for paper. Sorry. Council. Work in other schools has been identified by Estyn as good practice, and again, as already been stated, the PRU recently coming out of category is now mentoring other heads. There is more to do. I will not languish and continuous improvement is still our focus and embedded in the service. Indeed, there is a meeting of the Continuous Improvement Group tomorrow afternoon. That's not me, whatever that noise is. Right. Personally, I want to thank the leadership team of the Education Service and the wider team for their transformational change. Without them, this would not have happened. Silo working is a thing of the past. Teams genuinely thrive on the experience of working with other teams, seeing what bit of the machinery that service area deals with and gets involved in it. Our schools, for the role they play as a key partner, the relationship between schools and the service is the strongest I've ever known in my time with the authority. Dr. Praz has already mentioned GLASSES and their strength, and they remain a key partner to us and our schools. Finally, I'd like to thank the Chair of Scrutiny and her committee for their effective oversight of the service and challenging performance. I commend this report to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can I echo those comments? It's a pleasure to receive this report this morning, and it's a pleasure to thank you for all your support you've given to Scrutiny and the children of this borough. Thank you very much. Any further comments? Councillor David Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I think, you know, as a new councillor, I remember sitting in this chamber and hearing of the difficult situation that we were in with education. So I think it's a great credit to the team that came in and masterminded that change. So congratulations to you. And I think there's a great work that's done, and I know it's not just the leadership team, but it's across that department. So thanks for that. Two other things I'd like to mention very quickly. One that I think I would commend to all members who are governors is the resurrection and development of the Torvine Association of School Governors. I have learnt something every time I've been to a meeting, and it's a really good way of getting to know both the department but also the teaching staff. So I would commend that. And finally, I note what you said about governor vacancies being at a low level, but it's still significant. And I'd like to think that perhaps that can be an area we can target. We ourselves as members need to do our bit, I think, to encourage community members, as that's where the biggest shortfall tends to be. And maybe there's a piece for us to actually highlight some of the positives in terms of newsletters from serving governors. I look back at having been a governor for 25 years, so I'm sure if you want me to write something, I would probably volunteer. Dear, I did say that in a public meeting. I shouldn't have done. There we go.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Leader.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just like to start by thanking both Richard and yourself, as well as officers, for your leadership in this field. It's something that yourself as Scrutiny lead and Richard as Cabinet Member will recognise has transformed over the past 5 years into a position that's been described this morning. I think that's vitally important for our young people. I'd also like to extend the thanks to other members of this council as well, who have voted to consistently to make education our top priority when it comes to budgeting decisions. As Exec Member focusing on finance, I think budgets aren't the entirety of what makes school improvement, but they're a vital part of it, and our decisions to increase schools funding more than I think any other borough, whilst keeping council tax down, has been an important part of that improvement journey. So thank you to all members for their support along that journey. A couple of questions, really, if that's okay. First, I'll note the part about staff wellbeing. I think it's really important that we recognise the need to invest in our staff and in their well-being, because at the end of the day, schools are the sum total of the efforts of the staff who work in them to keep our children learning and safe. And I guess my question is, how do we continue to ensure that we both invest in the welfare of our staff, but also in schools, but also their professional development, so that we identify talent and how we can build it? One of the criticisms in previous Estim reports prior to the past 5 years was that we didn't do enough to invest in sort of middle leadership in schools to develop them for, you know, future head teachers, for example. Is there anything more you think we can do in that field? Second group of questions was around ALN, really additional learning needs, so I try and avoid using acronyms. That's one of the things that genuinely keeps me up at night as a councillor and council leader, how we respond to the demand that there's out there for whatever reason from children with additional learning needs, how we best keep them safe and keep them learning. I note the points you made about the extra money into the budgets, and that's something I hope we can continue to do. There's been a debate in Wales, of course, this month about funding an ALN. In England, of course, councils are allowed to put it on the credit card, so to speak, and have a statutory override for budgeting for ALN. That's not what we did in Wales, so we haven't had the credit card bill to pay off. However, that bill still exists within our school budgets. How do we continue to provide that money, and do you believe we've got sufficient funds there to at least try to meet that need? Because, of course, every unmet need is a child who's not having their needs met, which has both immediate impacts on the child and the family, but also long-term impacts on public services when it comes to demands. If we can meet children with additional learning needs demands, then their demand on public service in the future, consistently, evidence shows that that's decreased, which is better for the child in terms of their outcomes. It's also better for public services going forward. So how do we continue to get that funding in place? Secondly, I note the point about out-of-county placements. Of course, that's again both a cost to us as a council, but also not ideal for young people and their families. Is there anything specific that we can do to continue to drive down the number of out-of-county placements and ensure we provide for children in their community as much as we possibly can? And the last question, is on elective home education. I think it's important that we recognise that elective home ed is very different to how it was maybe 10 years ago, and the kind of parents who are, I don't like using the word choosing, because some of them feel they've got no alternative for the interests of their young people but to go down that route. How do we offer assistance to those parents and young people? I know we have to be careful in what we can and can't do, but how do we engage best with parents who are home educating their young people for what they see as the best interests of their children, so that we support them and put the child at the centre of that, rather than any views that we may or may not have about the decision that the parents have made?
Okay, so I'll start about staff wellbeing and professional learning. So one of the things that the HECs have constantly reported is that they value being part of the conversation of our improvement planning. We've got numerous working groups looking at school budget forum, ALN, we have attendance forum, we have an HR group. There's probably about 10 various working groups where senior leaders within the school regularly work with us. They've got a chance to raise the issues that are a concern to them, and we proactively will respond. They've said to me a number of times that that's been a significant positive for them, because they feel they're listened to and there's a collaboration to address the issues. So that's one aspect of supporting staff wellbeing. In terms of the professional learning, there's a really comprehensive programme that we offer. So one of the reasons we wanted to stay as a partnership with the School Improvement Service was because of the professional learning and the capacity that they offer. We've changed the way that the programme is developed. So each year we host a marketplace here in the Civic Centre where school leaders can come in and talk to members of the Education Service, members of the School Improvement Service, to talk about the issues they've got within their schools and develop a bespoke professional learning programme. That's now run for, I think, 3 years, and again, schools have really valued that. It's not just a off-the-shelf consistent programme, it's bespoke to their schools, and again, that's helping them to maintain positive staff wellbeing. We have done the same with governors. The uptake has not been as good with governors for professional learning, and so that's something we want to continue to review, and potentially offering more online recorded sessions so that governors can access it at a time that's right for them. But we know that's an area of work because there's a gap in our provision. If I can pick up the EHE bit first, because then it will cross over with the ALN. So we've recently recruited to a post that looks at both EHE, elective home education, and additional learning needs, because we recognise that there's an issue that crosses there, and that there are some families who feel they need to electively home educated because the needs of their learners are not being met within schools. So that's been an additional post that we're literally just recruiting to in education services now, because we want to strengthen that relationship with families. If there's a specific issue where they feel their child's needs are not being met within the school, we need to do something about it. And he's also set up a working group with a number of teams, both within Torfaen and across local authorities, about EHE. Just want to talk a bit about that.
Good morning, members. Good to see you all. Yeah, so we've created an EHE working group, basically, within the authority, which brings together different services who have got some role to play within supporting EHE learners. That includes colleagues from Careers Wales, that includes colleagues from the Youth Offending Service, that includes colleagues from Torfaen Learning Zone, colleague Gwent. And you mentioned about putting the child at the centre of a conversation there and how we can best support the child. That's precisely what that group is there to do, is to consider the needs of not individual cases but necessarily themes and how we can best match the provision that we've got available to us at the moment to support the child where the need is. So we're keen to work with parents across a range of different services to make sure that they're getting the best support that they possibly can. Yeah. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm trying to remember the question, so I'll start with the additional learning needs piece to begin with. Audit Wales published a report in April of this year around additional learning needs, and they looked at that in the round across Wales. And one of the findings of that report was that public bodies often don't have the data that they need to be able to respond to additional learning needs well and appropriately. So a piece of work that we've been doing is trying to develop a methodology which is an intelligent forecasting model, really, so that we can be more proactive and less reactive in our response to the rising demand for specialist placements. So that piece of work is ongoing, so we can look at trends from the previous 5 to 10 years and use that to extrapolate the next 5 to 10 years, so we can respond more appropriately to forecasted demand. That's part of that piece, and obviously there's revenue implications attached to that as well. So it's about trying to understand the landscape. And also what we do is, through our work with schools, we have an ALN head teacher strategy group, and we have an ALNCO forum, which is the additional learning needs coordinators across schools. So we do an annual survey with those groups around their professional learning needs. So in June of this year, I did a ALN State of the Nation briefing with all of our head teachers and then with our ALNCOs, where we presented them with facts and figures around the costs of ALN and recognised the challenges the schools face, and also presented the challenges local authority faces, because the principle behind that was that we're all in the same team here, Team Torfaen, and we're all trying to meet the needs of learners, so we can understand their needs better to be able to provide the right professional learning. So we've surveyed them, for example, on what future professional learning they might need, not just from the local authority school improvement service, but from the ALN team. And we're building a professional learning programme according to needs. So in the last year, everything that was done through the ALNCO forum came from the schools themselves, and we responded to their wants and needs, and we're building that programme for the coming year. In terms of the out-of-county placements, the 1.7 million that we quoted there, that's for out-of-county placements in its entirety. So that also includes CLAR pupils, for example, who are educated in other counties. So it's not, we're not spending that money placing children in placements everywhere. Sometimes we're spending that money because we're supporting children who reside in other local authorities but who are looked after to Torfaen. Often those children who are being placed out of county is where we have a lack of provision in our own county around meeting behaviour needs. So again, part of that piece of doing the forecasting and looking at the demand is also trying to identify gaps in provision in county. So we can, if we are presenting a case then for future specialist placement, we've got the intelligence behind that to say this is the gap and this is where we need to improve our provision, and the impact would be so on to reduce those out-of-county places. Hopefully.
Thank you.
Teaching and learning strategy, sorry, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, and then we have developed a teaching and learning strategy. So the inception of that started with LACIS, which was a strategy that they'd put out to schools around pedagogy, good teaching and learning, and we've taken that, brought that school improvement and additional learning needs agenda together and said good teaching and learning is about inclusive practice. So in the first iteration of that strategy, we've supplemented it with spotlights of good inclusive practice in our own Torfaen schools. And what we presented to Estyn was the idea of taking that further and using, Andrew has mentioned lots of spotlights in schools through Estyn reports over the last year or so, where we've got really excellent practice in many of our schools, where we can exemplify what good inclusive practice looks like in terms of teaching and learning through that strategy. But also that goes hand in hand with the professional learning needs, where you've said the needs of children and the cohorts of children coming through, their needs are changing, and we have to recognise that many of our staff would have trained a number of years ago and will need to keep upskilling themselves to be able to meet and adapt to the needs of the children as they're coming through schools. So that teaching and learning strategy is an ongoing piece of work that the ALN Head Teacher Strategy Group in the main will lead to make sure we're supplementing that with exemplification of really good practice across Torfaen and outside of Torfaen.
Claire, Leader.
Yeah, thank you for those responses. Hopefully they sort of typify the kind of awkward questions that I ask, but the professional responses that you always give, and I value those updates that I get as leader, and it's great that that comes to Council as well. I mentioned Councillor Clark and Councillor Seaborn and their leadership, but I think we also need to recognise, the four of you up on the panel, including Jason, your leadership in this respect, not just in terms of your expertise, but for me, the character and values that you've brought to the work, that sort of forensic approach that you take to all of your fields, the very honest conversations that we now have that aren't about you trying to sort of pull the wool over my eyes, but are about you giving an honest assessment of the situation so that we can look to build on that. So I really value that, and I'd just like to thank the three of you and Jason as well for your hard work on that, because I recognise there's a lot of work goes into it.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a few people wishing to speak. Was it Ron or Janet? On both. Ron first then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for that report. I mean, it's very extensive. And thanks to all the staff that have been involved. And I think a big thanks goes out to all the schools and the staff and the governors there that have worked hard to raise the bars then in our education. Nothing's perfect, and our education isn't perfect. There's a long way to go. And some of the questions I think you've already answered for me is additional learning. I mean, I know there are children out there being, what's the word, slipping away, because when it comes to children with dyslexia, then this is a question I asked some years ago, and you said about retraining, and no matter what business you're in, you must be retrained. How many teachers, what percent of the teachers are qualified to teach dyslexic children? But how many teachers can recognise dyslexia? When I asked this question some years ago, it was like 14%, and so many children were being ignored. There wasn't the funding for it. Statemented, you can't get a statement for years, and that's when they've been neglected. And I know a situation where the child was still easily dyslexic, and he was always in the front of the class, mocked because he couldn't answer questions, and the teacher wasn't qualified to teach anybody with dyslexia. So I think you've said about retraining, so we've got a long way to go. And there are children, ADHD, there's so many things, the categories now, but our staff need to permanent training, I think, because when teachers leave, and we know sometimes, I've got a friend who just got out of the education, she said I couldn't stick it anymore because what they have to put up with. So it's difficult, and we must, as Anthony said, work with them as well and protect them. But there's a long way to go with additional learning as well, because some of these children are being forgotten about, because there isn't funding for it, we know, and dyslexia is one of them. And I would like to find that problem as well. How many teachers are capable of teaching dyslexic children? Because when I asked the question 7 years ago, it wasn't a great deal, but we need to be on top of this, and teachers, the summer recess, whatever, what training do they have? And I would like some figures on what training they're getting all the time, you know, especially when it comes to dyslexia.
I couldn't give you facts and figures off the top of my head.
No, that's fine, no, yes.
But what I would say is all of our teachers and all of our ALNCOs who attend Forum, one of the issues they raised was around specific learning difficulties this year, for example. So we do have a teacher in our team who is a specialist in specific learning difficulties, and he came to our ALNCO Forum and did a training session for all of those on strategies and techniques to support pupils with those kind of difficulties, which they could then cascade back at their school as a train-the-trainer type model. And that's the model that we're trying to develop across Torfaen, because that is a more sustainable model of professional learning where you can upskill people to train people in their own schools.
Thank you. I have two more speakers. I'll take them and then we'll have the answers after. So Councillor Janet Jones and then Councillor Stuart Ashley, and then I'll bring in Councillor Richard.
Thank you, Andrew and the team, for a fantastic presentation. We speak regularly as a scrutiny committee, and I'm really glad in the report we're bringing up issues by colleague Gwent, because I really am concerned about post-16 education and the number of children from this authority who are going to Hereford. So I welcome an update on that in due course.
Councillor Stuart Ashley.
Thank you very much for your presentation and, you know, professionalism. I mean, obviously, like the other members here, I'm very aware of ALN because of family members. What the leader said was really interesting, because we've got the Welsh dimension, and I've got members of my family that have got this. It's right in my family, to be quite honest. I have better wording, but I've got members in England, family members in England, the family members here, and the difference between the two systems is quite interesting. The one thing that concerns me is, well, my grandson, to be quite honest, had been diagnosed just recently, and he's 9, and my nephew was 5. It's that difference between approach. And I know you guys are under a lot of pressure. The leaders said that with this is autism, ADHD, and things around that. It's urgency, and as my daughter said to me, it's ticking away. Year 4, year 5, you know, and it doesn't come back round again. And it's how you guys approach it. You've got the committees or setups. I do talk to a lot of other people, because once they know you, as a member, once they know you've got interest in this, and I'm not on many of the education scrutinies. I am a school governor, and the approach to the school that I'm on, I find really, really sound. I've got a chair here, by the way. So, but you know, we all talk to each other. We're and as members, we get it all the time. You know, social media, etc., etc. But I do appreciate what you guys do. It is not easy, and I know that. And I have a further generation back who are in their 30s now who have got autism, ADHD, and the history of this subject. In fact, I was talking to a special needs teacher who's in her 80s. The history of this subject is unbelievable. So, no, I would like to hear your observations about how we go forward with it, and we make sure that it's consistent. Because I think this is what everybody was talking about, the consistency on the subject, how we get... And I go back to the Wales strategy in the 70s, and things that were shocking then. So it's making sure that everybody gets equal opportunity system, and I just think what you're doing professionally is really, really important.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Okay, I'll start and bring Claire in. So we're really fortunate. Claire's been appointed as a director to DUSCI, which is the national professional learning body for Wales. So Claire's got a voice at the table of setting a consistent professional learning programme for all teachers, all support assistants across Wales. It's really helpful, Claire, as a previous head teacher of several schools, including very large schools, and as an LA officer with a focus on inclusion, brings that perspective across it. So there's a voice at the table to drive national initiatives.
Thank you, Andrew. And yeah, I was going to say, before I came into this role 2 years ago, my previous background was in schools, and I was a head teacher of 2 different mainstream schools, so I understand the challenge of leading a school and trying to continually adapt to practice as well, which is why in my previous answer I've talked about trying to forge those really good relationships with schools, because that is what makes the difference, is when we are all working together and we're all, you know, pushing in the same direction. So we've recognised as a local authority that you know, there's an increasing need around neurodivergence in our schools. So about a year or so ago now, just after starting post, we invested in a resource called Autism in Education Trust. The name of it has changed now, but essentially it was a package of professional learning that Monmouthshire had bought into and developed really successfully and rolled out across all their schools. And we'd taken some learning from that local authority. So we've rolled that initial training out to all of our schools, and then there's a second part to that. Again, it's a train the trainer model, so our ASD support officer and our ALN advisory team have rolled out that first initial module to all of our schools, which is about giving everyone a basic awareness around strategies that can support neurodivergent learners. And then the next iteration of that then is more detailed training, and that is something that will be ongoing. And again, we're trying to develop a sustainable model. What we don't want is someone who comes out on a course for one day and then goes back to school and doesn't do anything with it. So we're trying to train trainers in each of our schools that can then build that into their annual cycle of professional learning.
Thank you. Councillor Collett-Thomas.
Chair, I'd just like to say I've been a member of the Education Scrutiny Committee for many years now, and I would really like to thank the 3 officers on the dais there for their help and support in scrutiny. You've made it so much easier. We have all the information in front of us, and you're never afraid to answer any questions in great detail. So thanks very much. It's been a pleasure working with you.
I think you can tell from the debate how important members feel about our education service. Councillor Richard Clark.
I think it's right and proper, Chair, that there's been a key focus on ALN this morning, which reflects the attitude of members and officers in supporting the most vulnerable in our society. And that's why I'm proud, as a Labour administration, our budget put an extra 300,000 into ALN provision over and above what had previously been put in. I do share the leader's he didn't say exasperation, but I will, exasperation that the current regime in Cardiff are being so mealy-mouthed that they will not support ALN pupils in their proposed budget. I just mentioned the 300,000 we put in. We in Wales put money up front. The leader referred to what's happened in England and the bailout that the government in Westminster provided for English schools. Quarateg, I'm not a Welsh speaker, but it's a good phrase, fair play, that should come to us. And we have got a proven record as an education authority that the money that comes to us gets transported to the schools. So, come on, Welsh Government, play fair, support the most vulnerable children in our country and their futures, because it's not just about here and now, it's what will happen to those students in the future. So if the message can go out from this chamber today, and I know 21 other executive members of Education, Children's Services, whatever the authority calls them, sees ALN as their highest priority. When I visit schools, every single head teacher has spoken to me on the subject of ALN, applauding what we do, but also saying there is more that funding could bring. We haven't got it. We've put in what we can put in. Quarateg, fair play, support us, Welsh Government. The other thing I wanted to come back on, because I hadn't planned to come back on that, was Councillor Williams and governors. I appreciate he was making a point, but I will answer directly. TAS, I think the reinvigoration of TAS is very important. It died a death. I remember many years ago, 2004, when I was Chris Gallio's representative of TAS, Oh dear, 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 dear. What a meeting it was. It was, yeah, it was. So the reinvigorated, thanks to Andy and the team, TAS is very important. I do need to get my lazy backside to the meetings and be part of it and hear what governors say. Because that's the important bit of TAS, as well as providing information for yourselves, it's feedback to us to shape what we're doing. The improvement plan came through TAS. No, and we had the representation of governors. In respect of vacancies, I'm very pleased that there are only 4 LA vacancies. We have changed the way we do it. It's not my edict. It used to be and is in other authority the edict of the executive member. You can have blue-eyed, red-eyed, whatever you want to call it, syndrome, where a political face gets a post or not. I've opened it up, and appropriate people, including elected members, can be governors. Schools are very shaken, I think, when I turn around to them and say, well, you've got a vacancy. Is there anybody on your governing body? I know some people have been community governors and had to leave. Well, if there was a vacancy then for an LA, maybe you put those persons forward. One of your former councillors, Councillor Jones, was a good parent governor at Chris Gallio. His term ended, and I put him on as a LA governor. So, although there are vacancies, it's not confined to your good selves. But if any of you wish to volunteer, there is a form on the website. Please fill it in, and I know most of you do already, but I hope that addresses your 2 points, Councillor Williams. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. The recommendations start on page 181 of the report. Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations, please? Are there any members against the recommendations? And any abstentions? Thank you. That report is carried. Thank you very much, all. Takes us to agenda item 16, which is the joint Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen Joint Local Development Plan Collaboration Agreement. The report starts on page 231 of your agenda. Adrian Wilcock, Planning Officer, could you introduce the report, please? Change the name, I didn't change your designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. In March of this year, both Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen councils agreed the principle of preparing the joint local development plan. This report provides the details and seeks approval of the terms of reference for a collaboration agreement between the councils on that joint plan, and that's contained at Appendix 1 of your report. The collaboration agreement establishes the legal, governance and operational arrangements needed for the councils to work together. The Joint Planning Policy Panel, we call the JPPP, apologies for that, of members is proposed to provide oversight and consultation throughout plan preparation and comment on key documents before they're reported to Council. The JPP will be advisory only, so it's not a decision-making body, as key statutory decisions will remain with each individual council. The panel will be comprised of 14 non-executive members, with 7 members from each council, established to provide political balance and geographical representation. On top of that, we're proposing a joint advisory group to assist in resolving issues arising through the preparation process of the plan, and that would comprise the leaders of both councils, the cabinet members responsible for planning, the joint chief executive and the joint chief planning officer. To undertake the work, we're also proposing a shared planning policy unit, which we call the SPPU, be created by combining the planning policy teams from both councils while still being employed by their current employer. And that team will prepare the joint plan and any joint supplementary planning guidance we produce. And that team will be accountable to the new Joint Chief Planning Officer. As regards staffing and cost-sharing principles, legal, governance and evidence gathering will be split 50-50. Council-specific studies will be wholly funded by that benefiting council. And just to check it's all going along, we'll be undertaking annual reviews of staff's time and costs to ensure fairness and prevent either authority being disadvantaged. For your information, a similar report was presented to Blaenau Gwent Council on the 15th of July, and they resolved to enter into the collaboration agreement to prepare the joint plan, and also agreed their 7 members of the Joint Planning Policy Panel. All 4 report recommendations are detailed in paragraph 7.2 of your report on page 237, which I recommend to you. And finally, with regard to recommendation 2 on the Joint Planning Policy Panels, the 7 Torfaen members nominated are as follows. Labour Group, Councillor Stuart Ashley, Councillor Linda Clarkson, Councillor Stephen Evans, Councillor David Williams. Independent Group, Councillor Elizabeth Haynes. Torfaen Independent Group, Councillor Janet Jones. Reform UK Wales Group, Councillor Alan Slade. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you, Adrian. Can I ask members whether they agree, as outlined by Adrian Wilcock, to the recommendation, please? They're on page 237. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That report is carried. Takes us to agenda item 17, the draft delivery agreement for the Joint Local Development Plan, JLDP, which starts on page 249 of the agenda. Robert Murray, Principal Planning Officer. Could you deliver this report first, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Following the decisions of the Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen councils to withdraw their replacement local development plans at their meetings in March 2026, councils have commenced work on preparing a new joint local development plan with a revised time span of 2026 to 2041. Councils have a statutory duty to produce a local development plan in accordance with an agreed delivery agreement. The delivery agreement is a succinct public statement that contains 2 key parts. The first is a timetable, which is detailed in paragraph 4.8 of the report, for preparing the plan, and secondly, a community involvement scheme, setting out how and when stakeholders in the community can contribute to the plan preparation, development, monitoring and review. The report recommends approval of a 6-week consultation on the draft delivery agreement, which is attached as Appendix 1. A similar report was submitted and approved at Blaenau Gwent Council on 15th of July, and if this report is also agreed, the consultation is programmed to commence this Friday. Following completion of the consultation, a subsequent report will be presented to both councils in November to consider all the comments made and approve a finalised delivery agreement for submission to Welsh Government for agreement in December, to commence the formal preparation of the joint LDP in January 2027, with adoption expected in June 2030. Finally, all the report recommendations are detailed in section 7, which I commend to you. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? No. The recommendations start on page 254 of the report. Members, do you agree with the recommendations, please? Anybody against those recommendations? Any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item 18, which is the joint scrutiny protocol, and this starts on page 295 of the agenda. Gareth Harris, Monitoring Officer, could you deliver this report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'm presenting this report on behalf of Tom Roberts, the Head of Democratic Services. And the purpose of the report is to agree the joint scrutiny protocol attached as Appendix 1. As a result of the new federated arrangements, the Council's democratic processes need to keep pace with the new ways of working. The new protocol will provide a mechanism by which it is possible to bring together the equivalent scrutiny committees from both councils as and when the need arises to jointly scrutinise an agreed topic. The approach has been discussed with a working group of elected members comprising of all group leaders and scrutiny chairs from across both local authorities, led by the Chief Executive. The Constitution will be updated so that it is possible for scrutiny committees to meet as a joint overview scrutiny committee. So the recommendation is that the Council, subject to approval by Blaenau Gwent Council, adopts the joint scrutiny protocol attached as Appendix 1 and delegates authority to the monitoring officer in consultation with the Members' Constitution Working Party to make the necessary changes to the Constitution. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you, Dallas. Members, you're happy to agree with those recommendations? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That report is carried. Thank you, Dallas. To agenda item 19, the update to political balance, committee chairs and membership of committees. This report starts on page 305 of the agenda. Dallas Harris, Monitoring Officer, could you deliver this report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Again, this is a report I'm presenting on behalf of Tom Roberts, Head of Democratic Services. So the purpose of this report is to inform members of the revision to the political balance of the Council. Legislation requires the distribution of seats on committees and subcommittees to be on the basis of political proportionality. Following the Senedd election in May, Councillor Jason O'Connell was elected as a member of the Senedd and therefore resigned. As a result of the by-election, which took place on the 2nd of July, Councillor Jonathan Hollins was elected. This has resulted in a change to the political balance calculations and the committee seat allocations, and these are shown in Appendix A and B. Also, at the Council meeting on the 26th of May, Council approved the establishment of a Joint Appointments Committee, and the membership of this committee has been incorporated into the committee allocations in Appendix B. So the recommendation is in paragraph 7, and that's to firstly agree to adopt the political balance calculations in Appendix A, and secondly to appoint members to serve on the committees affected by these changes as shown in Appendix B. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you. Councillor David Thomas, did you have a point?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'm just going to ask if I could please replace Councillor Alan Slade with Councillor Jonathan Hollins on the Adults and Communities Scrutiny Committee, please.
Thank you. Did you hear that, Dallas?
Yes, that can be, the recommendations can be agreed subject to that amendment proposed.
Thank you. Members, any further comments? No? Can I ask you whether you're in favour of the recommendation, including the change that Councillor Thomas has proposed? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That report is carried. Thank you very much. Takes us to agenda item 20, the motions on notice. Motion on notice starts on page 315 of the agenda, and the motion 1, Councillor Stewart Keat. Can you move and explain your motion for us, please, as shown on the pages 315 and 316 of the agenda?
Firstly, thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Before I move my motion, I'd like to acknowledge a number of things. Firstly, to acknowledge the work that's already been undertaken in fly tipping, particularly with Councillor Mandy Owen and also with the officers and the staff of Torfaen Council in trying to deal with what I believe is a bit of a scourge within our borough. This motion should not be seen in any form whatsoever as criticism of the work that's already been taken on within Torfaen, but an opportunity to refocus, re-evaluate and re-energise our commitment to fly tipping within Torfaen, which I believe is a significant issue that blights our communities throughout all Torfaen. And I sincerely hope that all members view this motion in the spirit that it is intended and put forward. I'd like to start off and talk about the fly tipping. Fly tipping continues, I believe, to be a blight across Torfaen. It's damaging our environment, it's attracting vermin and creating public health risks, and imposes significant financial costs on local taxpayers through the clean-up enforcement. I'm sure many of us are aware that only quite recently a number of tonnes of waste was dumped at the Pennygan and Gervethin Football Club, I may add, to the credit of this council, it was dealt with and all that waste was removed. However, I myself, when I endeavoured to get a quote for the remove of that cost, was something in the region of £1,500. So clearly, there was some cost to removing this waste. That residents are consistently identifying that fly tipping is one of their principal environmental concerns and are crucially frustrated by the repeated offending and the perceived lack of enforcement. That communities, including Trevethin, have experienced persistent and, I believe, well-documented fly tipping and environmental crime. I may add, on Sunday, which is a regular activity of mine, I go for a run, a nice long run on a Sunday. I start off in the Tranch along Coit to Wye North Road, and as I'm running on the left-hand side, I see a number of doors, mattresses that are tipped to the left-hand side. I'll go back there in a week or two's time. It's been cleared, but then it's been replaced with tyres, a sofa, right, and various rubbish from people's gardens. I then continue my run. I then go up to where the Blue Lagoon, I'm sure you all know where that is. Really, we are going to a beautiful part of Wales, something we should be all very proud and living within this community. And as I'm running, I then see 3 fridge freezers dumped by the side of the road, up towards Talawain. I continue, and then to the left-hand side, there's building rubble that's been dumped to the left-hand side of the road. And then there's a car parked in the middle of nowhere. I run up to them, and there's a couple from St Giles. I stop and have a quick chat to them and say, how are you enjoying the weather in the countryside? And they say to me, oh, it's really lovely up here. And by the way, they offer me a bottle of water as well.
Madam Presiding Member, can we have a point of order?
Can we keep to the motion that you've proposed, please? I'm reading line to line and I can't see where you are at the moment.
So I'm just going to get to the point here. I'll finish. But the point that was made to that couple in the car, it's beautiful up here in this countryside. It's just a shame about the fly tipping. And this is literally a few yards away where there's a sign up saying no fly tipping, £50,000 fine or imprisonment. Now, there are a number of Welsh local authorities, including Caerphilly Borough Council, that have successfully utilised both fixed, mobile and covert trail cameras at known hotspots to identify offenders. And they have secured prosecutions to deter future offending, which has been reported recently within the South Wales Argus. Also, that the Welsh Government has supported measures to strengthen local authority enforcement against fly tipping, including the use of surveillance technology where appropriate. And that tackling fly tipping requires, I think we all agree, a balanced approach combining robust enforcement, effective surveillance, but also, more importantly, accessible waste disposal facilities and, of course, public education. Accordingly, I move the following motion: that this Council therefore resolves to request that the Executive Member and the relevant officers undertake an urgent review of the Council's current fly tipping strategy and enforcement arrangements, produce a borough-wide assessment identifying persistent fly tipping hotspots, and evaluate each location for the suitability of fixed, mobile or covert trail cameras, and that we investigate and pursue all available Welsh Government grants, funding opportunities, partnerships and initiatives to support the enhanced enforcement activity. That we prioritise the deployment of these CCT cameras, covert trail cameras, at the high-risk locations, including recognised hotspots such as Trevethin and the road that I mentioned over in the Tranch, and where it is, of course, operationally appropriate and legally compliant. What I'm looking for is basically a SITREP, a situation report, a report back to the full Council within 6 months detailing current fly tipping statistics and trends, annual financial costs of removing fly tip waste, the number of investigations undertaken, the number of fixed penalty notices issued, the number of successful prosecutions over the previous 3 years, the effectiveness of current enforcement measures, and recommendations for strengthening enforcement and reducing repeat offending, and to review whether improvements can be made to the household waste recycling arrangement, household waste recycling accessibility and public information to make it lawful waste disposal easier and to remove the incentives for this illegal dumping. And finally, to launch a borough-wide public awareness campaign highlighting the penalties for fly tipping, encouraging residents to report offenders and promoting responsible waste disposal. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you, Councillor Keats. Is that motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor Arnsfeld. Can I ask members if they wish to debate this? No? Sorry. Councillor Haller.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I take this motion on board and consider how vital this is. But over the years since I've been elected, we've had direct communication through those officers in the World Heritage Site, and we have used cameras in surveillance, and they have proactively been very, very good to capture those people. The biggest issue I can see with this motion is that although that fly tipping happens across our borough, and I agree it's a blight, a lot of this fly tipping happens on private land, and the situation we have with private land is it's the responsibility of those landowners to be able to take that rubbish off the site. So therefore, it makes it harder for Torvine to actually deal with the issue. So if there's anything that I would like to add to this is that I would like to see a better way of communicating with the landowners to remove the blights from the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mandy. Councillor Mandy Owen.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Councillor Keith, for your interest in tackling the fly tipping. I fully acknowledge the significant impact it has and other environmental crime it can have on our communities. I'm also pleased to note your recognition of the team, the hard work that's done, and also the importance of enforcement and regulation in addressing these issues. I know we were in a recent area meeting where you were with the Environment Directive officers, and we discussed your intention to put forward this motion. And at the time I did suggest you go back and just see what exactly we do and familiarise yourself with the work already being undertaken by the Council through our fly tipping and litter strategy 21 to 26. Reading through the proposed motion and listening to it, appears that you're not fully aware of the activity that currently does take place throughout the borough to prevent, investigate and tackle through enforcement, education, partnership working and community engagement. Many of the actions proposed within the motion are already being delivered through the Council's existing approach to tackling fly tipping, and I can advise, I'll go through them now, review the current fly tipping strategy and enforcement arrangements. We've already got an adopted litter and fly tipping strategy in place, and the review is being done now, basically, in preparation for next year to inform its future development. Identification of persisting fly tipping hotspots. The Council already monitors fly tipping incidents across the borough to identify the hotspot locations and target enforcement activity, including the use of surveillance cameras to gather evidence and take enforcement action against offenders where possible. I think we've just had several cases. There was one last week in the newspaper. It was £2,200 that they were fined. The pursuit of Welsh Government funding and partnership opportunities. We already work closely with Welsh Government and key partners, including Keep Wales Tidy, Fly Tipping Action Wales and Natural Resources Wales, to identify the best practice, funding opportunities and collaborative approaches to tackling fly tipping. The deployment of CCTV and covert surveillance. We already utilise surveillance measures where appropriate, proportionate and legally permissible. Reporting on performance and enforcement activity. We already gather and monitor information relating to fly tipping incidents, investigations, enforcement activity and associated costs. The information informs service planning and performance management. The waste disposal arrangements and accessibility. The Council recognises that effective enforcement must be supported by accessible waste and recycling services. and the existing strategy promotes a balanced approach to making waste disposal as straightforward and easy as possible for residents. And I know we've just increased what we collect on the curbside. We do the small electrical items, we do the textiles. The household recycling centre is open 7 days a week. You know, so it is very accessible for residents. We also do, there's a lot of engagement now and education work going on within Councillor Morgan's department. Public awareness and education. The Council regularly uses communication, social media and community engagement to encourage responsible waste disposal and highlight enforcement outcomes. Only last week, the outcome of a recent successful tipping prosecution by the Council was published, in which the offender was ordered to pay more than £2,250. So taking all that into consideration and what we actually do, and going back to your points of motion, I would personally like to, as an amendment, put forward that after you say this Council therefore resolves to, we replace those with, we continue to undertake a comprehensive review of the existing litter and fly tipping strategy. We develop the updated strategy for 27-31 that will reflect the current challenges, emerging opportunities, technological developments and the best practice from across Wales and the UK, and ensure implementation and delivery of the revised strategy is subject to ongoing scrutiny and challenge through the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and also making sure that we consult with elected members, partner organisations and the wider public on our proposed revised strategy.
Thank you. We've had an amendment from Councillor Mandy Owen. Is this amendment seconded? Thank you. That's seconded. Do you wish to debate this, members?
Can I just make one? Thank you very much for that, and I appreciate. I think we're all very much on the same team.
Can I ask if you just wait? I'll go through the motions, and then we'll ask you if you'd like a vote of reply.
Yes,
okay. So we need to vote on this amendment then. Are we clear what we're voting on?
Sorry, Chair. Just a point of order. Can we have a written copy of the amendment?
Was due to come up on screen. Is it coming? Is it going to be put on the screen? It's on the screen now. Okay. Do you want a couple of minutes just to read that through? Can we keep the... Right, the Council therefore resolves to. Those 4 points. Is it Councillor Mandy Owen? Yeah. Thank you. We have a couple of minutes just to...
Madam Presiding Member, is it possible for me to say something on this? Just to say, I represent a ward with high deprivation and a lot of fly tipping. The fly tipping is mostly to do with the housing associations. The majority of it normally comes from that, and not Torvine. I have constant battles with the housing associations because it's their fly tipping and not Torvine's. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Do you want, Councillor Mandy Owen, do you wish to add anything into that amendment?
Yeah, it's just on Councillor Evans's point. Point 3 was consult with elected members, partner organisation, the wider public, and I think it's an ongoing piece of work. You know, we're all affected by fly tipping in every ward that we've got. So it's just getting everybody around the table, really. And I think it could be a good point to have a seminar on this so we can get everybody and up to date on where we are and what can be done, what's under our ownership and what isn't. So I can take that forward as well. If
yeah, members, you're happy with that? Okay. You're happy that you've read the amendment and satisfied with what you're voting on? Okay. So we've got points 1 to 4 there, that Councillor Mandy Owen's amendment. We'll take a vote on that. All those in favour of the amendment? Anybody against? Any abstentions? That amendment is carried. Thank you very much. That takes us back to the... where am I? I'm lost again. There we go. If there's an amendment, if I remember the amendment. So I need to explain that the amendment is also known as a substantive motion, and ask members if they are in agreement that the substantive motion is now carried. Can I announce the result of the amendment as carried? Thank you very much. And therefore we don't go back to the substantive motion, do we? Sorry, I'm looking confused here because I've got one after the other. Councillor Keats, do you have a right to reply? Thank you.
The whole purpose of this today, again, was to re-evaluate, to re-energise and refocus on fly tipping, and that is the main purpose. What I would say when it comes to cameras, I can tell you now in my own area, we just had a recent meeting with Bronavon and the local police force. We've got one camera that's functioning in Trevethyn at the moment. Wrong. We've got one camera, and that's not fully functioning at the moment in Trevethyn. So that was a meeting we had literally a couple of weeks ago with Councillor John Haller. So I do think we do have a bit of work to do, but thank you, and I appreciate this motion going through.
Can I just come back in as well? I'm happy to meet outside this meeting to discuss any areas or issues you may have as well.
Thank you.
So, members, we're in agreement with the amendment, and the amendment was carried, so that is the result of that. Thank you. Agenda item 21, members' question time. There are 12 questions today. Give me a chance to find my sheet. Oh, that's what I was looking for. Okay. First question is from Councillor Colette Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to the recent concerns on the southern stretch of the canal, especially at Two Locks, could the executive member confirm what the short-term and long-term maintenance schedule, please?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Thomas. And to note, I'm responding to the canal questions today, both of them, with an emphasis around the canal strategy. So members approved the 10-year canal strategy in 2024 with an ambitious vision to restore navigation from 5 locks to Cwmbran Centre. At the southern side of Cwmbran, the canal meanders for another 2 miles to the Newport boundary and provides easy access for communities to walk, cycle or fish in the heart of nature. We've seen 2 years of both low rainfall and high temperatures, and the water levels on the canal are significantly lower. Low water levels, high temperatures and increased vegetation recently led to a lack of oxygen on the waterway. Unfortunately, this saw 2 separate and distressing fish kills on the southern canal stretch. Although these events were clearly upsetting for both the community and canal users, we saw an exceptional and much appreciated coming together of local groups to clear a channel of weed with agreement from NRW. Cabinet members joined Bridge 46 to 5 Locks Canal Group, the Monmouthshire, Brecon and Abergavenny Canals Trust and Cwmbran Angling Association volunteers to complete emergency works. The clear channel should improve water flow and oxygenation, whilst also keeping important habitat in place. We saw firsthand the volunteers' dedication, their local knowledge and their commitment to protect and enhance wildlife. This collective work is both inspiring and a perfect example of the deal in action. I can confirm that the short-term plan will include repairs to the leak at the Cascades, and can I thank that member on Facebook who posted with identified where the leak was. That was really useful information. And removal of self-seeded saplings from the towpath and the retaining wall. Longer term, a contractor-led mix of weed cut and dredge will be undertaken in September. We must avoid bird nesting season between Star Street and Llandau Street. Additionally, high-level estimates have been sought for works to address the remaining waterways, including Cwmbran Retail Park stretch and the remaining canal down to the Newport boundary. These large-scale works would include off-site vegetation cuts, dead tree removal, weed cuts and dredging, and clearance of culvert grills. As work moves further south towards Newport, water levels on that stretch should improve, along with the user experience and overall look and condition of the canal. Given the significant costs of the comprehensive package of works, the external funding team are currently assisting with identifying potential sources. We can then be in a good place to commence an annual maintenance plan of works in 27 to ensure wildlife can thrive and visitors have the best experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Thomas?
Oh, that's fine, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Janet Jones, question 2.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The recent spell of hot weather has seen both primary and secondary schools in the borough closed, with children presumably undertaking online lessons. As this type of weather is something that we will all be becoming accustomed to, should we, as an authority, now be considering putting air conditioning in our schools and/or changing school times so that children's education does not suffer?
Thanks, Councillor Jones. The recent period of exceptionally hot weather has undoubtedly created challenges for schools, learners and staff. The health and safety and well-being of learners must always be our priority, and head teachers have a responsibility to assess local conditions and take decisions where temperatures or building conditions make normal operation difficult. These decisions must also consider even wider safeguarding, well-being and health and safety considerations, particularly for vulnerable groups, some of whom need the structure and support that the school day often gives them. We recognise that climate change is likely to result in more frequent periods of extreme weather, including high temperatures, and this is something that councils across the UK are increasingly considering when planning the future. In relation to air conditioning, while it may be a straightforward solution, installing and operating air conditioning systems across all schools would involve significant capital investment and ongoing energy costs. Many school buildings, particularly older ones, were not designed to accommodate such systems and would require substantial adaptation. We must also balance cooling requirements with our wider commitment to sustainability and reducing carbon emissions. That said, where possible, we will always look at what help can go to schools to adapt to hotter weather. These include improvement to ventilation, shading, insulation, solar control measures, tree planting, and the incorporation of climate-resilient design principles as future building improvements and school modernisation programmes take effect. Longer term, if the frequency of hot weather events increases, the question of changing school opening hours during periods of extreme heat may be also worthy of consideration. However, this would have to be carefully evaluated, taking in the account of school transport, childcare implications, staff working arrangements, and the practicalities for families. Any significant change would require consultation with schools, stakeholders, and would need to comply to national requirements regarding the school day and education provision. While some schools have made temporary adjustments during periods of extreme weather, our current approach is to support head teachers in taking proportionate decisions based on local circumstances, while ensuring that any disruption to learning is minimalised. Schools must only close in extremely exceptional circumstances, and when attendance at school is affected, school must support pupils learning, albeit remotely. I think previously during COVID, I said there's no such thing as a snow day anymore. Whatever the equivalent is of heat day, beach day, I suppose, probably inappropriate.
Thank you, Richard. I think we're going from one extreme to the other at the moment, but thanks for your answer. My next question is, Chair, I think my next question has been thoroughly answered by our officers and by Councillor Clark, so I will withdraw that if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Janet Jones. That takes us to question 4. Councillor Nick Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. The question, what are the Council going to do to make sure an illegal encampment doesn't turn up at the Woodfield Road football and surrounding ground in Newin again? Furthermore, could the Council provide a site with working showers and toilets for travellers passing through in the future, where a charge can be imposed for use?
Councillor Mandy Owen.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for your question. I'd first like to acknowledge the efforts and officers and thank them for their prompt and coordinated response to the unauthorised encampment set up at Woodfield Road in New Inn at the end of June. Officers in Public Protection and Environment responded quickly by conducting site visits and convening multi-agency meetings with internal stakeholders and external partners. These meetings enabled information sharing, risk assessment and coordinated decision-making, ensuring that the welfare needs of the travellers, the impact of local residents, public safety considerations and any necessary enforcement action were considered in a balanced, proportionate and lawful manner. To reduce the risk of further unauthorised encampments at Woodfield Road, a key action arising from those discussions was to consider measures to prevent unauthorised vehicle access to the site. Officers within the Environment and Asset Management Services will progress this work, provide recommendations for consideration. In relation to the second part of your question, the Council already provides and manages a dedicated site for members of the travelling community, primarily for those with a connection to Torfaen. Residential pitches are supported by utility blocks, providing showering, cooking and washing facilities. A transit pitch is also available, although it is rarely used. The Council is currently reviewing its gypsy and traveller provision in line with Welsh Government guidance to ensure an adequate provision is available to meet identified needs. Previous assessments, together with the limited use of the existing transit pitch and the relatively low number of unauthorised encampments within the borough, have not identified a requirement for additional transit provision. The assessment doesn't sit within my portfolio, it crosses over into several areas. So I'm answering this as I was already giving you a response on the public protection aspect. We assess the public health impacts, but we'll ask the Cabinet member responsible to make sure that members are updated on the outcome of the review. And the findings of the current assessment, alongside the work on mitigation measures, will help form any future decisions, and members will be updated in due course.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bird. Question 5, Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'll skip this one if that's all right, because it's already really been answered by the executive member anyway. So it's
Thank you. I like the generosity of these elected members. Question 6, Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. It's nice to get a compliment this time. We're only playing. At what point does this administration stop blaming financial pressures and start accepting responsibility? After decades in power, residents see overgrown public spaces, roads and pavements in poor condition, growing concerns about antisocial behaviour and schools facing increasing pressures. Too often, when residents complain about neglected green spaces, Labour hides behind biodiversity, instead of admitting maintenance has been reduced. Does the leader accept that the condition of Torfaen today is a result of this administration's own priorities rather than what the residents of Torfaen want and rightly pay their council tax for?
I think the leader's
Okay. Thank you for your question, Councillor Thomas. I must, however, respectfully disagree with the premise of the question. Financial pressures have been an unfortunate reality for councils across the UK as resources have diminished and the demand on services like social care have increased, with inevitable results on the more visible services. But no council in Wales has been more proactive in taking control of its own destiny in the face of that reality. Our federation with Blaenau Gwent, our adoption of the Marmot Principles at the core of all we do, and our community's approach, now exemplified by the Torfaen deal, are all evidence of us grabbing the bull by the horns, trying to be positive in shaping our communities, instead of just moping about a lack of resources, all with the long-term aim of investing more in frontline services. On the point you raise around biodiversity in public spaces, this is a balance all councils of any political persuasion face between keeping areas tidy and addressing the biodiversity crisis. I reject any assertion that this is a binary choice. We have to do both. The Council's revised approach to grassland management has been introduced to improve biodiversity, support climate resilience and help meet our environmental responsibilities. It's not been driven by the need to deliver cost savings. Ecological monitoring undertaken at sites across the borough has demonstrated measurable benefits, with improvements in plant diversity recorded at 92% of the sites surveyed along with increased opportunities for pollinators and other wildlife, which is vital for our continued existence on this planet.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Thomas?
Surprisingly, yes, I do. Thanks for that answer, Councillor Hunt. Do you generally believe that Torvine is improving? And could you identify 3 visible improvements that every resident would recognise today, rather than another list of reasons why nothing is your fault?
Okay, I'll rise to the challenge. 3 visible improvements in Torvine. I would say 1 would be the improvement in school facilities, including 3G pitches across the borough, which is something that we've invested heavily in. Secondly, I'll point to the improvements being made to play areas around the borough that we can do more on. And lastly, I would mention the investment that's going into our roads, which, yes, will take time to have an impact, but will have an improvement going forward. So, yes, there's lots of work to be done, but I believe we'll drive this council forward using the strategy that we've got, which is to federate with Blaenau Gwent, to drive forward the Torvine deal, and therefore to get more money invested in those frontline services that you mentioned.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nicola, question 7.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Further to my members' questions in previous meetings this year, please can I have the relevant Cabinet Member give me and my community an update on the following important buildings within our heritage town. Number 1, T Mawr, Blenavon House, a vital component of UNESCO World Heritage status. Park Street School, closed in 2012, owned and leased by TBC, that is partly demolished in 2019 for safety reasons. 3, Arthur Jenkins Nursing Home, owned by TBC and closed at the end of last year. And lastly, Market Street Tavern, a retail unit that was partly funded by Blenavon Townscape Lottery Programme. Please could I have an update on any progression on these buildings to be put back into good use for our community? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Joanne Gordon.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Thank you for your question, Councillor Hawler. It's quite lengthy because you've mentioned 4 different unique buildings in Blenavon. I'm able to provide following updates on each of the buildings. So T Mawr, the former town hospital and then residential home, has fallen into significant disrepair under private ownership since 2006. A recent CADU-funded condition appraisal describes the building as at risk of collapse without urgent structural intervention and poses a significant risk to anyone entering the site. This is not acceptable for a Georgian building of such character and heritage and is a key component of the World Heritage Site. I can advise that officers are currently awaiting a further report on the costed strategy for emergency works, which will stabilise the remaining structure. Once that report is received, we will need to determine how best to ensure the essential works are undertaken. So if enforcement is considered, this may include either an urgent works or a repair notice. Both are lengthy processes which carry financial risks for us at the Council, and we will engage with all ward members when we have firm options of the way forward. Park Street School, yes, as you said, the site was demolished in 2019 following closure of the school, and at that time a way forward was not resolved, leaving the area unused for a considerable period of time. I am sorry, there is no real update other than the future of the site is being reconsidered and the potential for a registered social landlord using the site may be looked at. I am also conscious that the promised meeting with ward members and officers is yet to be scheduled. They wanted to wait for a firmer update before they met with you, but I will make sure that happens. Arthur Jenkins Home, so following the closure of the Arthur Jenkins Care Home, officers drew up internal options appraisal. Following 2 internal submissions, ward members were informed of a tentative proposal to explore the submission from social care further. So officers are building a business case now and identifying funding streams to consider a potential social care facility to meet regional demand in the north of the borough. Finally, Market Street Tavern Retail Unit. Officers are arranging a meeting to discuss the future plans for the vacant shop with the shop with private owner. Just to note that the owner has been away, so they haven't been able to meet yet. But the owner has confirmed the unit is available to let at £500 per month. There's no minimum lease, and the unit currently has an A1 retail use, although prospective tenants could explore an alternative use if appropriate. So when the unit was previously marketed, council officers supported the owner by promoting the opportunity through local business networks and organising an open day, which attracted 9 interested businesses, and with a further 3 viewing separately. Similar support can absolutely be offered again, including promotion through Business Direct, and the owner may choose to appoint a commercial estate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon. Councillor Hall, did you have a supplementary to the information you've received?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Takes us to question 8, which is Councillor Haller.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Daily, I'm seeing numerous deeply scuffed roads that are not a pleasure to drive over, and potholes across Torvine. That will get a lot worse as we go into the winter. Please, can I have an update on what is planned financially to ease the poor conditions of many roads in the borough that clearly are in need of some TLC to restore them to a better condition than they are currently before we go into the winter? Thank you.
Councillor Mandy Owen.
Thank you, Councillor Hall, for your question. I know you're aware that the Council is continuing to make significant financial investment in the highway network. Through the Better Roads Torvine programme, we are delivering a £6.4 million 5-year investment in the highway network across the borough. The Council's commitment to highway investment has also increased significantly. On top of the annual £400,000 highways budget, an additional capital investment has resulted in an additional £1 million a year spent on roads between 2026 and 2030. Annual council-funded capital investment after this date will increase from £400,000 per year to £1 million per year, demonstrating our commitment to improving the condition and resilience of the borough's road network. Furthermore, an additional £500,000 for highway maintenance and pothole repairs approved this year, funded through £400,000 from the Council's Asset Reserve and £100,000 from the Members' Choice Reserve. With regards to roads that appear deeply scuffed, it is important to note that while some surfaces may look worn, they do not always meet the Council's adopted intervention criteria for repair or resurfacing. These risk-based intervention levels ensure that our resources are directed to defects where repairs are necessary, effective, provide long-term value and ensure that our highway is safe. Experience shows that repairs to defects below intervention levels often have poor retention periods and can fail prematurely, resulting in poor value for money. Highway officers continue to carry out inspections, review road condition data and respond to reports from residents and members in order to prioritise investment where it is most needed. As we move towards winter, our focus will remain on targeting safety-critical defects, delivering our planned resurfacing programme and making best use of the additional funding that has been secured. The Council is investing more in its road network than in previous years and remains committed to improving road conditions across Torvine for the benefit of residents, businesses and visitors alike.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you very much for your comprehensive answer. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Question 9, Councillor Nick Haller.
Both myself and Janet Jones are getting very concerned about the misuse of the Garn Lakes. These lakes were planned as a nature reserve in 1997, and over the time this area has become a thriving habitat for a variety of birds, mammals, along with a multi-layered ecosystem that has also has a very popular coarse fishing site in the lower lake. We are hearing and seeing that the Garn Lakes are being used in an appropriate manner for swimming, paddleboarding with groups gathering inside the protected areas of the upper lake. We both are concerned that these areas, are not monitored regularly and action being taken to deter these activities, the interference of the wildlife habitat in the protected nature reserves. Please, can the relevant Cabinet Member give us reassurance that the plan of action is in place to deal with these activities that are causing concern and that we have been raising for many months? Thank you.
Councillor Mandy Owen.
Again, thank you for this question, Councillor Hawler. I agree that Garn Lakes is a valued community asset supporting biodiversity, well-being and the local environment, and is enjoyed by residents and visitors alike. Sadly, I also recognise that locations such as Garn Lakes, with a unique combination of open water, natural habitats and public access, can attract activities that may negatively impact the environment and pose risks to public safety. I know we've had lots of conversations and previously discussed your concerns with officers, and together with partner agencies we have used our social media channels to raise awareness of the dangers associated with swimming in open water. Officers have also commissioned new signage advising that swimming and water sports are not permitted at the lakes, which are due to be installed in the coming weeks. Our environment and community safety teams work closely together to monitor antisocial behaviour at the lakes and share reports with Gwent Police where appropriate. I'm also aware that the police have recently undertaken patrols in the area, and we will continue to work in partnership to address these issues you raised, and will continue to promote the safe enjoyment of this important community asset.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Can I just have a second view on this? I think the biggest issue we have currently is the amount of officers actually visiting the site and being present when these activities are going. Could there be more presence of enforcement officers in this area, please? Thank you.
I suppose when you look at the enforcement officers, you know, they cover the whole borough as well, so it's very difficult to be in one place, you know, a lot of the time. But I will take that forward and maybe have further discussions with the partner agencies.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Question 10, Councillor Nick Hawler.
My last, sorry. Over the time, we are witnessing inconsiderate parking in Glenavon that has been affecting emergency services, bus companies, local businesses and residents across the town, especially later in the day, overnight and weekends. Is it now time to invest in more hours on a 7-day week programme to enforcement officers to deal with concerns raised by the residents about access for emergency services along with service providers in our community?
Councillor Andy Owen.
Thank you for this question, Councillor Hawler, and for raising this important issue. I fully appreciate the concerns that residents, businesses, bus operators and emergency services have regarding inconsiderate parking in Glenavon, particularly later in the day, overnight and at weekends when parking pressures can be greater. The number of penalty charge notices, PCNs, issued this year is slightly higher than in previous years, which demonstrates that our civil enforcement officers are continuing to take action where parking restrictions are being contravened. I can also confirm that a wider parking enforcement review has now started. I know you've asked about this in the past. As part of that review, we will be considering how enforcement resources are deployed and whether any changes are needed to ensure we are responding effectively to issues and concerns raised by local communities. Whilst we do not currently provide a routine 7-day-a-week enforcement service, we do deploy parking enforcement officers at weekends where specific parking issues have been identified. This enables us to target resources at locations and times when problems are known to occur. In addition to their enforcement roles, our officers also work at local events such as community football tournaments, helping visitors identify appropriate places to park and promote considerate parking behaviour to minimise disruption for residents and local services. I recognise the importance of maintaining access for emergency services and ensuring that residents, businesses and service providers can move around Glenavon safely. We will continue to monitor the situation closely and consider any findings and recommendations that emerge from the ongoing enforcement review. We will update members when we have completed the review and will feed back with any findings.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary on this?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Is it now not time to invest in this vital service? For the last 3 weekends, we've had a bus service that has had to withdraw from certain areas of our community because of bad parking, and this is happening on a Friday and a Saturday. We are now getting the services up to the north of the town stopped. There are residents that constantly rely on these services that cannot use those services, and until action is taken place on those bus routes, those services are going to be withdrawn by the local company. So therefore, I really am now asking for some positive action to remove this situation, so the residents of Blaenavon that want to use a bus on a Saturday and a Sunday can. Thank you.
I'll speak to the team again, but I'm presuming that you have informed them that this is happening and given them times as well, so yeah.
Thank you. Take this question 11, Councillor Janet Jones.
Thank you. As World Health Champion, I'm very concerned about the issues at the Keepers Pond, where we see increasing numbers of visitors every week. This is great, but it comes with consequences. Safety of those choosing to be involved in water sports, including open water swimming, in an unsafe location where there is no defibrillator or rescue equipment. Damage to the environment as a result of barbecues, dogs letting be off leads and fouling, fences being cut down, allowing animals to stray, and off-roading, speeding vehicles, parking on historic artefacts. There is much more I could go on with. All this is having a detrimental effect on the habitat and on the livelihood of the farming community in the area. With the hot weather, there can soon be a risk to heathland fires, which will further erode our landscape. Torfaen is a partner in the steering group for the management of our World Heritage site, and it is for this reason I'm asking that through senior leadership we encourage other partners to take action before issues get totally out of control and more incidents occur. Bearing in mind, just over a week ago, there was a fatality at the Keepers Pond.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Jo Gordon.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you for your question, Councillor Jones. You are right to endeavour to preserve the natural beauty of Keepers Ponds in Blaenavon and ensure that visitors' safety is paramount. Keepers Pond sits within the World Heritage Site and on common land. The pond was built in the early 19th century to supply water to the Forge. Whilst it's owned by Monmouth County Council, the surrounding common land is managed by the World Heritage Site Management Steering Group, which includes Torfaen and Monmouth Councils and also Banai Brycheiniog National Park Authority. You are right that any discussions needs to include all of those partners. Councillor Jones, you haven't actually directly asked about the installation of donation-based parking meters. I can see you smiling. And I would just like you to note for you that officers have concerns around the impact on the visual landscape, soil erosion and compaction if drivers were to park elsewhere, avoiding any associated charges. Officers are maintaining a dialogue with Banai Brycheiniog and will put forward representations should metering proposals go to their planning committee. I'm aware from local media that Banai Brycheiniog are undertaking a health and safety investigation of all aspects of visitors' safety at Keepers Pond, so I won't comment further or speculate on safety at that site. But I will happily work with officers and my colleague, Councillor Owen, to write to colleagues in Monmouth County Council and Banai Brycheiniog, pressing for consideration of the wider concerns you've raised around protection of the historic landscape and its natural environment.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. The issue of parking has already been discussed at one of our commoners groups, but I really would be grateful if you can take it up. Torfaen, as an authority, we take our part very, very seriously, but I'm concerned about the other authorities and the impact it's having, so I would be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Nick Byrne, question 12.
Thanks, Madam Presiding Member. The question is, after the recent passing of the Hillsborough Law, which I commend, will the Council be following course to maintain the course led by the UK Government across all departments?
Councillor Peter Jones, I think you're done for this.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for the question. The Council fully supports the principles underpinning the Public Office Accountability Bill, or Hillsborough Law. We particularly support the commitment to openness, accountability and building public trust and confidence. Some members will recall that several years ago the leader proposed a motion supporting this law. We are currently working on how best to embed the law's principles across all aspects of the Council's work, recognising that the duty of candour and strengthened professional obligation on staff will need to be embedded across all Council services. As the legislation develops, we will review its impact on our policies, training and organisational culture so that the principles of transparency and honesty remain at the heart of how we engage with residents, respond to scrutiny and conduct our public activities.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Nick Byrne, are you happy with that? Or is there something?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to agenda item 22, the Cabinet decisions for the 2nd of June 2026. The Cabinet decisions start on page 317 and are for the Council to note. There were no challenges to any of the decisions. Any members wishing to comment or take a question? I'll ask members whether they agree with the recommendations to note then, please. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, they're noted. The date and time of the next meeting, for your information, members, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 15th of September at 10 o'clock, after you've all had a lovely, restful holiday. Thank you very much for your attendance. That closes the meeting.